A man noticed something weird while on a train. The entire high-speed train started shaking out of nowhere. Before he could even figure out what was going on, news reports of the accident popped up. Right after that, the train derailed in the forest. And this report happened to be seen by Jeff's son. Then the camera cut. Jeff, who had been in the disaster, was sitting in a hospital bed unharmed. Even the medical staff were amazed at his luck, because this disaster had almost killed everyone. Some unlucky people didn't even leave a complete body behind. Only Jeff survived miraculously, and he didn't have a single injury on his body. At this moment in the hallway, it was packed with relatives come to claim the remains. Jeff walked past everyone's sad gazes. As soon as his son saw him appear, he immediately rushed over. But Jeff right now didn't show the slightest hint of joy at surviving the disaster, because he couldn't understand why such a horrific accident. Not only didn't he claim his life, but didn't leave a single scratch on him. Before long, the local church held a memorial service for all those who had died unfortunately. However, after the ceremony, Jeff noticed someone had slipped a piece of paper under his windshield wipers. There was a bizarre message on it. How many days have you been sick in your life so far? After reading the words, Jeff immediately scanned his surroundings. Even though he didn't see any suspicious people, he was also very curious about how many times he'd been sick. Even after he went back to work as a security guard at the company, Jeff still couldn't stop thinking about it. Having no other choice, he went to the Human Resources Department, wanting to find out how many sick days he'd taken so far. Unexpectedly, the supervisor misunderstood what he meant. Thinking Jeff was asking for a raise, he quickly said he'd give Jeff a salary increase, and also praised him for his good work attitude, saying he had no leave records at all.
I checked, you were right. You've never taken a sick day. 5 years, no sick day, I get it, you want a raise. Smart way to make your point.
The supervisor's answer only made Jeff more troubled. Having no other option, he had to wake his wife up, asking her how many times he'd been sick in his life. Who would have thought her answer was exactly the same as the supervisor's, saying that as for his health, not to mention serious illnesses, he hadn't even had any minor injuries or pains. After hearing this, Jeff only felt more confused, and the unease in his heart grew stronger.
What do you think it means?
It means probably too tired to remember.
At the same time, there was a man named Mike, whose physical condition was the exact opposite of Jeff's. He had been plagued by severe osteogenesis imperfecta since childhood. Even the slightest carelessness could cause a fracture. The most extreme case was when Mike was just born. Doctors observed multiple fractures on his body. This made his first half of life pass in fragility and sensitivity. He locked himself at home every day and didn't contact anyone else, afraid of getting hurt while playing around. His mother wanted Mike to cheer up, so she put a comic book on the chair downstairs. This method really worked. It was the first time in Mike's life that he'd come into contact with something like this, and he immediately became obsessed with the comic story. Taking the opportunity, his mother encouraged him, saying if he wanted to keep getting comic books, he had to start interacting with other people. In the end, these comic books influenced Mike's entire life. When he grew up, he still firmly believed in the superheroes in the comics, and even thought they actually existed in this world. And Jeff was the superhero he'd been searching for so hard. So the note Jeff received was deliberately left by Mike, because in his eyes, Jeff's body was the proof. And at the same time, after some searching, Jeff actually found out where the note came from, and followed the clues to find Mike. Mike wasn't the least bit surprised by his visit, and even asked right away if he'd ever suffered any injuries or illnesses. Seeing this, Jeff honestly told him the truth, but Mike wasn't satisfied with this answer. He wanted all the records of Jeff's health from the day he was born. At this moment, Jeff's son took over the conversation, telling Mike that his father had just been in an accident recently, and had even given up his dream of being an athlete because of it. Upon hearing this, Mike instantly felt a sense of despair, because this meant his inference was wrong. Having no other choice, Mike had to tell the truth, saying that he'd been weak and sickly since he was born. Fortunately, with the company of comic books, he'd managed to get through it, and over the years as time went by, Mike had gained more insights into the comics he'd read. He thought someone was using comics to pass on civilization, so drawing was a sacred and solemn thing, even if it was just comic book art. So from Mike's perspective, if God had created him with such a fragile constitution, then there must also be people with much stronger constitutions. No matter what hardships they went through, they'd still be alive and kicking like nothing had happened.
If there is someone like me in the world, and I am at one end of the spectrum, couldn't there be someone else, the opposite of me at the other end? Someone who doesn't get sick, who doesn't get hurt like the rest of us. And he probably doesn't even know it.
Mike's analysis was perfectly logical, but Jeff only thought he was talking nonsense. He was clearly just an ordinary person, living an extremely plain life. How could he possibly be related to a superhero? He was convinced the other man was just spouting nonsense, so he resolutely stood up and walked out the door. But sometimes people are like this. The more you pretend not to care about something, the more it lingers in your mind. He remembered what his son had said about him getting injured during the day. He immediately pulled out the old reports about his supposed injury, but in reality he hadn't gotten hurt at all when he was an athlete back then. It was just a car accident where all his teammates were seriously injured. His son had lied just to test him. The next day, Jeff went to work as usual, but unexpectedly ran into Mike again at the office. But unlike yesterday, he wasn't unfriendly at all. Instead, he showed a strong interest in Mike, and even wanted to figure out everything about this whole thing. Suddenly a thought popped into Jeff's mind. He felt there was a dangerous person in the crowd, who was wearing camouflage clothes, so he immediately told the other security guards to tighten security. And as it turned out, Jeff's hunch was exactly right. When the suspect saw that things weren't going well, he immediately used a cough to cover up his escape. Seeing this, Mike felt incredible, and quickly asked Jeff what was going on. Unfortunately, Jeff had no clue either. He only knew that the man's gun was probably silver. Having no other choice, Mike had to change the subject, asking him if this kind of situation happened frequently. If he got an affirmative answer, it would mean Jeff was definitely a superhero. But before Jeff could open his mouth, he was called away to work, so Mike had to give up for the time being. But he still wanted to verify Jeff's prediction in his heart, so he planned to follow that suspect. But unexpectedly, the man noticed he was being followed, and immediately sped up into an underground passage. This put Mike in a difficult spot, because with his physical condition, it would be hard for him to get down such a long flight of stairs.
I just want to ask you something.
Seeing that the man didn't even look back, Mike had to rely on his legs to chase after him step by step down the stairs. Unfortunately, he stumbled and fell. Even though he was seriously injured from the fall, because of the upside-down view after tripping, he saw a silver weapon hanging from the man's waist. A satisfied smile appeared on Mike's face. After that, he was admitted to the hospital for treatment. With his fragile constitution, he was badly hurt this time. Not only did he have multiple bone fractures all over his body, he now had to use a wheelchair to get around, and would even need crutches for a long time afterward. At the same time, Jeff's son was also influenced by Mike, and began to regard his father as a Superman with an indestructible body, and determined to test out the truth. The son actually tampered with Jeff's workout equipment. He quietly increased the weight on the machines, but who would have thought Jeff trained as usual as if nothing was wrong? Even though his father noticed something was off with the weight afterward, and warned his son not to do that again, the son still persisted, continuing to add more weight to the equipment. But Jeff still wasn't hindered in the slightest, finishing his workout easily. Now even Jeff himself started to have doubts. Could it be that Mike's words weren't completely groundless? Seeing this, his son decided to increase the intensity even more, so he added all the barbell plates he could find, and even threw on some extra iron buckets. But unexpectedly, it still wasn't enough to stop Jeff. At this point, the son was completely convinced that his father was the legendary superhero. A few days later, Jeff was suddenly bumped into by someone. The moment they made contact, a scene suddenly flashed through his mind. It was this person stealing something in the bathroom. Jeff immediately stopped him for questioning, but after searching him thoroughly, he couldn't find anything in the man's pockets, because the man had already transferred the stolen items. Now Jeff started to doubt again whether he was really a superhero or not. Suddenly the pager in his hand beeped. Jeff learned that his son had gotten into a fight with some other kids. Both children thought their own dad was the strongest, and they ended up fighting because of it. So Jeff was called to the principal's office. Unexpectedly, the principal turned out to be his former teacher. Seeing his old teacher brought back memories for Jeff. Back when he was still in school, he'd once been on the verge of death because of a diving accident, which was why he'd been terrified of water all these years. After the conversation ended, Jeff also received a complaint from his son, who blamed his father for not admitting he was a superhero, making him lose face in front of his classmates. When he got home, to test out the truth, his son actually picked up Jeff's gun directly.
You don't believe? I'll show you. You can't get hurt.
The gun's not loaded. That's not where I keep the bullets.
New Rookie of the Year trophy.
After hearing this, Jeff panicked instantly, even though he quickly stepped forward to explain. His son still firmly believed he was a superhero. His wife, who was standing beside him, also hurried to explain.
You know all about that. Don't do it. He'll die, Joseph.
I'll just shoot him once.
Joseph, listen to what your mother...
In an instant, the bullet was officially chambered. Jeff was still trying to talk him down, but his son's emotions were on the verge of losing control.
Now, I am your father, and I am telling you to put that goddamn gun down right now! 1, 2...
Fortunately, the son still couldn't bring himself to do it, but Jeff and his wife were still scared out of their wits. The next day, he went to Mike's house, telling him to stay away from his family. After all, his son had almost cost him his life yesterday. But at this moment, Mike was completely certain that Jeff was the superhero he'd been looking for, because when he followed the man in camouflage that day, he had indeed seen the man holding a silver weapon, and the color was exactly as Jeff had predicted. Plus, Jeff had been in a bad mental state lately, especially feeling extremely down during the day. The reason was that his superhuman identity hadn't been revealed yet, and he hadn't found his own purpose in life. But Jeff recalled that it was based on his experience as a security guard, that he deduced the man was carrying a weapon. As for why he guessed the color correctly, it was because that color was the most common one. But Mike suddenly changed the subject, and started talking about the 3 accidents Jeff had been in. But no matter which one it was, he managed to cheat death every time, and had become the sole survivor. At this point, Jeff also talked about his fear of water, saying that he wasn't actually immortal. He almost died in that diving accident back then. After saying all this, he walked out the door and went straight home. And afterward, Mike fell into despair as well, starting to doubt whether his guess was really correct or not. not. But just as he was feeling completely discouraged, a comic book on the bookshelf caught his attention. It mentioned that neither superheroes nor villains could be 100% perfect, and this content made Mike realize instantly that Jeff's fear of water was also proof that he was imperfect just like superheroes. He immediately sent a message to Jeff.
We are on the same curve, just on opposite ends. The point of all this is we now know something we didn't. You have a weakness. Water. It's like your kryptonite.
After hearing this, Jeff fell into deep thought immediately. That night he went to a scrapyard, standing in front of a car that had been totaled in an accident. Memories of a past event suddenly flooded into his mind. Back then Jeff had really wanted to be with his wife, but his wife hadn't liked him when he was an athlete. So to win her heart, he staged an accident, and through a heroic rescue act, he successfully gotten his wife to be with him. After that he used the excuse of being injured to quit his career as an athlete. But in reality Jeff hadn't suffered any injuries at all in that accident. Now connecting this with what Mike had said, he also began to believe that he really had superhuman abilities. As soon as he got home, he dialed Mike's phone number.
Hello.
I've never been injured, Elijah. What am I supposed to do?
Go to where people are.
Jeff started following Mike's instructions and stood in a densely populated area. Miraculously, whenever someone bumped into him, Jeff could see the wrongdoings that person had committed. Take this woman in the red leather jacket for example. Just a moment ago she stolen a necklace and was now hurrying to flee the scene. Still feeling unsatisfied, Jeff reached out his hand, wanting to keep peeking into the wrong things people had done. He saw another person smashing things on the street with a wine bottle, then a man in green clothes trying to take advantage of a drunk woman. And even more terrifying was a man pushing a garbage cart, whose real identity turned out to be an extremely brutal kidnapper, who had even killed someone to achieve his goals. To verify the truth, Jeff followed him all the way, until they reached a villa. The man reached into the mailbox and took out something, then quickly disappeared into the heavy rain. After Jeff pushed open the villa's iron gate and went inside, he immediately saw the messy state of the house. One could imagine how intense the resistance the kidnapper had encountered was, and as expected the owner of the house was still inside. At this moment a faint sound came from the bedroom. He quickly followed the sound to go check it out. Jeff rushed forward quickly and rescued the two people, trying his best to calm them down. After doing this he had planned to leave right away, but then in another bedroom, he saw there was still someone waiting to be rescued. But at this moment Jeff seemed to hear a noise on the balcony, so he signaled the girl to be quiet with his hand, while slowly moving toward the window. Jeff was suddenly pushed down from the building. Fortunately, the place where he fell was a swimming pool, which was covered with a thick rain cover. But soon Jeff felt that this thin layer of cloth was sinking rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he was completely engulfed by the water. Just as Jeff's consciousness was gradually fading away, the two people he just rescued suddenly arrived, taking tools to fish him out of the water. At the same time, the man was still plotting his next move, completely unaware of the danger behind him. Just looking at the cracks left on the wall was enough to tell that Jeff really did possess superhuman strength. In just one brief confrontation, he had resolved a crisis. Afterward, Jeff quietly returned home, and this incident today had awakened his sense of justice. He thought that from now on he wanted to do more good deeds. The next day he deliberately put the newspaper on the dining table, and when his son saw the story about the hero saving people in it, he immediately became certain that his dad was the mysterious hero. Jeff didn't hide anything from him anymore. Seeing this, his son immediately burst into tears, too excited to say a word. After this, it also cured Jeff's emotional problems. Having a sense of purpose made him feel much better. He even started treating being a hero as his job, and became completely immersed in this pursuit. Later, Jeff personally went to Mike's house to visit him, because this had allowed him to find his life's purpose, and he owed it all to Mike's help. But unexpectedly, Mike had also been keeping an eye on Jeff all this time, and reached out his hand wanting to shake hands with him. However, the moment their hands touched, Jeff saw flashes of Mike's past. He never would have thought that Mike had done all these things over the years, just to achieve his own goals. He once taken countless lives at the airport, and later even set fire to a tavern, leaving thousands of families shattered overnight. And even Jeff's train accident was also caused by him. At this moment, Mike no longer hid the truth, saying that everything he done all these years had been to find a superhero. Now that his goal had finally been achieved, he could die without any regrets in this life. These words made Jeff tremble with anger.
Now that we know who you are, I know who I am. I'm not a mistake. It all makes sense.
In the end, Jeff reported Mike to the police, and the police also found evidence based on the clues. At the end of the story, Mike was sent to a mental hospital.
You know what, David?